The wind carried a sharp chill as Alex trudged along the overgrown path leading to St. Greystone Monastery. It was a forgotten place, swallowed by time and whispers of terror. The villagers spoke of it in hushed tones, their eyes darting toward the distant silhouette of the crumbling structure. Yet, Alex's curiosity outweighed their warnings. A freelance journalist, Alex thrived on uncovering stories others feared to tell. The sky, painted in hues of fading orange and purple, seemed unnaturally still. Around the monastery lay a sprawling pumpkin field, its once vibrant crops now wilted and pale, as if the life had been drained from the soil. Alex stopped at the rusted iron gate, its hinges groaning in protest as they pushed it open. Ahead loomed the monastery's dark spires, jagged and imposing against the twilight. Every step through the field felt heavy, the air thick with an unshakable sense of being watched. Alex paused near a cluster of misshapen pumpkins. One in particular stood out, a massive, luminescent gourd at the center of the field. Its glow was faint but unnatural, pulsating like a heartbeat. "Don't go near it," a voice startled Alex. Turning, they found an old man leaning against the gate. His face was etched with lines of worry, his eyes clouded with something between fear and pity. "It's just a pumpkin," Alex said, feigning confidence. The man shook his head. "It's her. Sister Evelyn. They say her soul is trapped in that cursed thing. Touch it, and you'll never leave this place alive." Before Alex could respond, the man turned and disappeared into the shadows as if the field itself had swallowed him whole. The legend of Sister Evelyn was familiar to Alex, an old tale of betrayal and dark magic. According to lore, Sister Evelyn had been a devout nun beloved by her community. But when famine struck and the villagers accused her of hoarding food, their adoration turned to rage. Some claimed she cursed the land before her tragic demise, binding her soul to the field's harvest. Alex dismissed the thought with a shake of their head and continued toward the monastery. Inside, the air was cold and stale, carrying the faint scent of decay. Shadows stretched across the stone walls, illuminated by the pale light filtering through shattered stained glass. In the main hall, Alex found a series of carvings depicting the monastery's history. One panel, darker than the rest, showed a robed figure surrounded by pumpkins, flames rising around her. "Sister Evelyn." A faint whisper floated through the air, soft and chilling. Alex froze, heart pounding. The whisper grew louder, overlapping into a cacophony of voices, all emanating from the direction of the glowing pumpkin. As Alex turned to investigate, the whispers ceased abruptly, replaced by an oppressive silence. The air felt heavier, colder. Something was wrong, but the pull of the story was too strong. With a final glance at the haunting carvings, Alex stepped deeper into the darkened halls of the monastery. The whispers resumed, this time closer. The hollow echo of Alex's footsteps reverberated through the monastery's cavernous halls. Dust hung heavy in the air, catching the faint moonlight that spilled through shattered windows. The deeper Alex ventured, the more oppressive the atmosphere grew, as if the walls themselves sought to swallow any intruder's whole. Their flashlight beam danced across peeling murals of saints and angels, their serene faces long marred by decay. It was a stark contrast to the malevolent energy Alex felt seeping from the shadows. Then, the beam caught something unusual, a door, barely visible beneath layers of grime and ivy, its surface carved with strange, intricate symbols. Driven by equal parts fear and determination, Alex pushed it open. A low creak shattered the stillness, and they stepped into a small chamber hidden deep within the monastery. The air here was different, colder, as though untouched by time. At the center of the room was a stone pedestal, and atop it rested a leather-bound book, its cover embossed with faded golden runes. Surrounding the pedestal were rows of withered pumpkins, their shriveled forms grotesque and unnatural. Alex hesitated, the weight of the room pressing down on their chest. Despite an inner voice urging them to leave, Alex reached for the book. The leather was ice-cold against their fingers as they opened it. The pages were filled with cryptic diagrams and instructions, all revolving around a ritual that spoke of transferring a soul into a vessel, specifically a pumpkin. One passage stood out, scrawled in a jagged, hurried script. To summon her wrath, disturb her sanctuary. To end her curse, destroy the vessel. Before Alex could process the words, a loud thud echoed from behind. They spun around, heart racing. One of the shriveled pumpkins had toppled over, though no one was there. The room grew colder, the air vibrating with a low hum. The humming escalated into whispers, unintelligible, yet filled with malice. Shadows flickered unnaturally across the walls, converging toward the center of the chamber. Alex stumbled back, their flashlight flickering wildly as the whispers turned into an agonized wail. From the darkness, a figure began to emerge, a nun's silhouette, cloaked in tattered robes that seemed to float above the ground. Her face was obscured by a veil, but the emptiness where her eyes should have been bore into Alex's soul. "Why have you come here?" the figure hissed, her voice reverberating as though spoken from countless mouths. Alex froze, the book clutched tightly in trembling hands. "I am just here to leave." The figure's scream shook the walls, extinguishing the flashlight. Total darkness consumed the room, broken only by the faint glow of the book and the distant light of the pumpkin field beyond. As the wails subsided, the room fell deathly silent. Alex was alone once more, or so it seemed. But now they understood. They had disturbed something far older and far darker than they ever imagined. The oppressive silence was short-lived. A sharp, echoing crack split the air, followed by a low, guttural growl that seemed to reverberate through the stone walls. Alex's breath quickened as the temperature dropped further, frost forming on the edges of the ancient book they still clutched. The figure reappeared, stepping out of the shadows with unnatural fluidity. Her veil fluttered as though caught in an unseen wind, and her skeletal hands, curled like talons, reached toward Alex. Her voice was a chilling whisper that filled the chamber. "You dared disturb my sanctuary," she hissed, her hollow eyes glowing faintly. "Now you will pay for your arrogance." Alex stumbled backward, knocking over a decayed pumpkin. It burst upon impact, spilling a dark, viscous fluid that reeked of rot. The nun's form flickered, and she shrieked, a sound so piercing it drove Alex to their knees, clutching their ears. The room seemed to shift, the walls bending and twisting as if the monastery itself was alive and enraged. The once decrepit symbols carved into the stones began to glow faintly, pulsing in rhythm with Alex's panicked heartbeat. Desperate to escape, Alex scrambled to their feet and bolted for the door. The nun's laughter followed, echoing and distorted, as if coming from every direction. The hallway outside was no refuge. Shadows moved unnaturally, elongating and twisting into grotesque shapes that seemed to reach for Alex. Running blindly, Alex burst into the main hall, but the exit was gone. In its place was a towering wall of roots and vines, their thorns glistening like daggers. Trapped, Alex turned back, their chest heaving. The nun stood at the far end of the hall, her figure distorted and monstrous. Her veil lifted slightly, revealing a face too horrific to describe, a patchwork of rotted flesh, empty sockets where eyes should have been, and a mouth filled with jagged teeth. "I was betrayed by those I served," she said, her voice a blend of anguish and fury. "And now, you too shall suffer their fate." Alex spotted the glowing pumpkin from earlier, now sitting at the center of the hall on a pedestal. The whispers from the book returned, faint but insistent. "Destroy the vessel." The nun lunged, her claw-like hands outstretched. Alex dodged, the edges of her veil brushing past and leaving an icy burn on their skin. Gritting their teeth, Alex ran for the pumpkin, the whispers growing louder with every step. The nun shrieked, her form warping and stretching as she moved to block Alex's path. Shadows coalesced into barriers, forcing Alex to leap and duck in a frantic dash. At last, they reached the pedestal. As Alex's hands closed around the glowing pumpkin, the whispers ceased. The nun's scream filled the hall, deafening and filled with pure hatred. "Do it," the whispers urged, faint but clear. Alex hesitated, staring into the pulsing glow as the nun's form loomed closer. Time seemed to freeze, the final act hanging in the balance. The glowing pumpkin was cold and unnaturally heavy in Alex's trembling hands. Its faint pulse quickened as the evil nun surged toward them, her malformed figure a blur of rage and darkness. The whispers returned, louder and more insistent. "Smash it, end it now." Alex hesitated, staring into the hypnotic glow of the pumpkin. It seemed alive, its light flickering as though it were pleading for mercy. The nun's distorted voice cut through their thoughts, sharp and venomous. "Do you think destroying it will save you? You will only awaken something far worse." Her words sent a jolt of doubt through Alex's mind, but the rising crescendo of the whispers drowned out their fear. Summoning every ounce of courage, Alex raised the pumpkin high above their head and slammed it onto the stone floor. The impact unleashed an ear-splitting crack, and the pumpkin exploded into a cascade of blinding light and shards. A wave of energy rippled through the monastery, sending Alex sprawling backward. The nun let out a shriek of pure agony, her form writhing as beams of light pierced through her shadowy figure. For a moment, the room was illuminated, revealing her grotesque visage contorted in anguish. Then, as quickly as it began, the light faded, taking the nun's screams with it. Silence enveloped the hall, broken only by Alex's ragged breaths. But the victory was short-lived. The ground beneath them rumbled, and cracks spiderwebbed across the walls. The monastery was collapsing. Alex scrambled to their feet, adrenaline fueling their desperate escape. They darted through the twisting corridors, the structure groaning and buckling around them. Beams fell, shattering into clouds of dust and debris. The exit loomed ahead, now miraculously clear of the vines that had trapped them earlier. Bursting into the open air, Alex stumbled into the desolate pumpkin field. The cold night air hit their face, sharp and bracing. Behind them, the monastery crumbled inward, consumed by its own decay. For a brief moment, all was still. Alex collapsed onto the ground, the weight of what had transpired crashing down on them. Their hands were trembling, their thoughts a whirl of disbelief and terror. The glowing pumpkin was gone, and so, it seemed, was the evil nun. But as Alex's gaze wandered across the field, a flicker of unease returned. One of the pumpkins, small and unassuming, began to glow faintly, its pulse slow and rhythmic, like the beating of a heart. Alex staggered to their feet, backing away as the whispers returned, faint but unmistakable, carried on the wind. They turned and ran, their footsteps fading into the darkness. The field stood quiet once more, but the glowing pumpkin's light grew stronger, its faint hum a chilling reminder. Some curses cannot be destroyed, only delayed.